In 1971, Stanley Kubrick's dystopic black comedy, A Clockwork Orange, was a film that the world wasn't quite ready to understand. Its controversies may have been the reason why some critics dismissed it, as the film was banned in the UK for almost 27 years. And like all great art that survived the indictments of its critics, A Clockwork Orange has become a gem that different generations discovered on cable TV, home video, and currently through streaming. If you've seen the film, then you may or may not have understood the different meanings throughout the frame. In this video, I'll explain the film's story, its theme, and will go into detail on the film's many symbols. Fair warning, this analysis will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film, I suggest you watch it first before viewing this video. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange was based on the 1962 Anthony Burgess novel of the same name. Even though Kubrick's adaptation differed in ways from the novel, he ultimately chose to keep the title, staying faithful to the author's theme. So what exactly does A Clockwork Orange mean? In the foreword from a reissue of his novel, Anthony Burgess wrote, "A Clockwork Orange has the appearance of an organism lovely with color and juice, but is in fact only a clockwork toy to be wound up by God or the devil, or since this is increasingly replacing both, the almighty state." When the film opens, we meet our protagonist and narrator, Alex, wonderfully played by actor Malcolm McDowell. Alex is a delinquent psychopath who leads a gang of thugs whom he calls his droogs, a word meaning friends from the Nazdat language spoken in the novel, which was a hybrid of Russian words and English Cockney slang. Created by Burgess, who is also a linguist, Alex and his droogs rob, rape, and use violence for no other reason than the fact that they can. They're primal beings who are given in to every primal urge. Milk also plays an important role in the theme of the film. Milk represents purity, since it's one of the most natural and organic functions in all of life. The Kurova milk bar even features mannequins that dispense milk from the breast. The mother's milk is something natural, and at the same time, it's a catalyst for what Alex says will sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultra-violence. But it's not the milk, it's the various drugs laced in the milk, or milk plus, that get Alex ready to commit violence. It's the perversion of the natural into the mechanical. The main theme of A Clockwork Orange asks the question of free will. Do you lose your humanity if you're deprived of the choice between good and evil? I think it's also interesting to note that milk is also used to bludgeon Alex before he's picked up by the police. His droogs turn on him, because in the previous scenes, Alex asserts his power over them. When Alex confronts Georgie and Dim over control of the gang, they all sound like politicians negotiating over land and resources.
Well, if you must have it then.
They're doing what comes naturally. It's simply the nature of mankind to use violence, especially when greed or power are concerned. In the next scene, what does Alex do? He goes to war with his droogies. Masculinity is represented through mostly phallic symbols. The opening of the film, the droogies all appear to be holding phallic-looking glasses of milk. The mother's breast and consumption of milk are also used as symbols throughout the film. Remember, milk as a symbol used to tell the audience that these things are natural and organic. In the rape scene, Alex even cuts out the body parts on the clothing of the writer's wife. The phallic object Alex uses to attack the cat lady is a symbol of Alex's primal nature. Alex is like a caveman, taking whatever he wants or needs without the question of morality. Notice how the cat lady's house was filled with primal imagery. The cat lady fights back with the symbol of Alex's favorite musician, Ludwig van Beethoven. This is also important because it's a key for the audience to be aware that Ludwig van is a symbol and only sign of Alex's humanity. The milk bottle that smacks Alex in the face is also phallic shaped. And then in the next shot, in the jail scene, is another close-up of Alex's masculinity. The brutish policeman is not much different than Alex. He's also a thug, but a thug with the state behind him. And what does Alex grab once the cop asserts his authority? Mr. Deltoid grabs Alex the same way in an earlier scene. When Mr. Deltoid shows up in the interrogation room, the thug cop tells him,
"He must be a great disappointment to you, son."
Just like the cop, Mr. Deltoid is also a deviant with the state behind him. He's a weak stand-in as a parental figure, as Alex's own parents are self-absorbed and show false concern for his well-being. Both the book and the movie of A Clockwork Orange use a lot of religious imagery. The book's author, Anthony Burgess, was a Catholic, so the themes of good and evil are in the DNA of this story. Kubrick also uses a lot of religious symbols in the film. There's Alex's pet snake, which represents the serpent tempting man in the Garden of Eden. When Alex returns after being reformed, his parents tell him that the snake has died. While in prison, Alex indulges in the Old Testament parts of the Bible, the most primal parts, containing sex and violence. The only character in the entire film who could be considered moral is the prison chaplain. He shows concern when Alex inquires on the Ludovico technique. He raises the moral question, and here the theme of the film is summed up.
Goodness comes from within. Goodness is chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man.
Kubrick deliberately uses religious symbols in A Clockwork Orange. The main character, Alex, is not quote-unquote good by any means, but his story arc is identical to a Christ figure. He even talks like a Christ figure, referring to the audience as my brothers. He's betrayed by his droogs and turned over to the authorities the way Christ is betrayed by his friend Judas and turned over to the Romans. He offers to willingly sacrifice himself by going through with the Ludovico technique, even though he knows it could be dangerous. When the Minister of the Interior presents the Clockwork version of Alex, he says,
"He will be your true Christian, ready to turn the other cheek, ready to be crucified rather than crucify."
Once Alex is released from prison, he by chance runs into all his previous victims. The old drunk, his former droogs, and the subversive writer, Mr. Alexander. He endures suffering for his own sins.
"I've suffered the tortures of the damned, sir. Tortures of the damned."
His droogs are no longer street thugs, but thugs for the state, even demanding to be addressed in a certain way. They torture Alex like the Romans tortured Christ. Alex even experiences a sort of death and resurrection, only to be celebrated like a religious symbol at the end of the film. Alex becomes a Clockwork Orange, organic on the outside, mechanical on the inside. He's a walking zombie with no ability to choose between right and wrong. The nanny state has decided this for Alex, who's like a child. See how tiny he looks when the Minister of the Interior presents him. The scene with the naked woman is more of Kubrick's primal symbolism. He focuses the camera on the breast because we're being reminded of the milk metaphor. In this scene, Alex is in a fetal position, like a baby. He looks up at the naked woman and says to the audience,
"Was that I'd like to have her right down there on the floor with the old in-out. Real savage."
But the Ludovico technique doesn't allow him to do what comes naturally. He no longer has a choice. The nanny state took away his humanity. Alex is taken in by Mr. Alexander, who doesn't initially recognize him as his assaulter, until Alex belts out Singing in the Rain. Once he uncovers this, he drugs Alex and forces him to listen to Beethoven's Ninth. Beethoven might be the only element which makes Alex human. The music is now torturous and nauseating, and herein lies the paradox. Alex can no longer commit evil, but at the same time, what makes him human is taken away. The beautiful and the ugly, the choice between good and evil, is what makes humans human. When Alex is visited by the Minister of the Interior, he refers to the three authority figures in the room as his droogies. At the beginning of the film, Alex commits crimes with 3 other criminals, so the 3 people looking after his well-being are like his new partners in crime. The minister tells Alex that they've silenced the political writer and dissident, Mr. Alexander. They don't want to be exposed for the hypocrites they are, so they cover up Alex's crime, as well as their own. So how different is Alex from the authority figures in the film? Like the milk, Alex is purity, and the state is mechanical. The Kubrick film features a more darker, ambivalent ending. The book contained 20 chapters, which was the version Kubrick adapted. In another version of the book, which contained 21 chapters, Alex years later runs into his missing droog, Pete, who is married, working, and settled down. Alex starts to see a new life for himself and begins to grow up. The very last line in the film, Alex says, "I was cured all right." This line was meant to be ironic, since Alex has been cured of the Ludovico treatment, which supposedly was the cure of his violence. And now he's back to his natural self, in his pure horror show. I'm Jeremy Hamley, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.